You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot of college news to get to. Michigan State has a new head coach in football. 3 big college basketball games today. I'll also give you a little this day in sports history and a Mount Rushmore. Not in that order, though. I'll switch it up. But I have to start with Carlos Beltran. I didn't think I'd be talking about him again, but new details about his involvement in the sign-stealing scandal have come to light by Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellich of The Athletic. Mark Carrick also contributed to the story with his reporting. And basically, the story says that Beltran was an integral part of what the Astros were doing. Now, this has been reported before. Rob Manfred did allude to it in his report, but it's never come out to this extent. And now we finally have details on what Beltran did. And supposedly what he did was be a driving force behind their sign-stealing efforts. In fact, and this is right from the story, Beltran, according to multiple sources, told the Astros that their sign-stealing methods were, quote-unquote, behind the times. When small groups of Astros discussed their misgivings, Beltran supposedly disregarded it and steamrolled everyone and said, we're going to do this anyway. There is no question that, assuming everything in this story is true, and I have no reason to doubt that it is. Ken Rosenthal has been on this from the beginning, and I believe him wholeheartedly. So with this being the case, I give Commissioner Manfred credit for singling Beltran out. If Beltran was really a driving force behind this, yes. Get that out there. Put it in the report. Don't let Ken Rosenthal be the only one saying it. That's perfectly fine. But there's still an issue, though. If Carlos Beltran was not named manager of the Mets, would Manfred have included him in the report? I have no idea if he would have or if he wouldn't have. The stuff about not suspending players, to me that holds no water. I understand that you don't want to fight the Players Association. You're working on a new CBA and you want to keep the good times rolling. I get that. But that doesn't mean that you can let players get away with bloody murder. And make no mistake about it, this is the baseball equivalent of bloody murder. With the details that came out about Codebreaker and this crazy algorithm that the Astros developed to decode signs in real time, yeah, this is Jack the Ripper. You know, if Beltran was still a player and he did this, would Manfred have suspended him? I hope the answer is yes. You know, I don't want to hear 20 years from now that Alex Bregman was an integral part of this, or Carlos Correa, or Jose Altuve, whoever, and they avoided discipline because they were playing. No, you need to hold everyone to the same standard. It shouldn't matter if they're a player or not. And the fact that the union would protect them is sickening. I was critical in the past of Manfred's decision to single out Beltran. But given these new details, I'm changing my mind. I support the decision wholeheartedly. Single him out. Make sure that everyone knows this is what he did. And, yeah, the Mets should have fired him. No question. And it looks even worse for the Mets and Brodie Van Wagenen that they didn't do their due diligence about this. Beltran's name is mud now. And it should be. And it's going to be very interesting to see in a few years how this impacts his Hall of Fame candidacy. But there is one other element to this. A.J. Hinch, in an interview with Tom Verducci, said that he could have done more to stop this. But evidently, he feared that he didn't have the credibility to take on Beltran. Are you kidding me? I don't give a damn if Babe Ruth comes back from the grave and is the ringleader behind this. You're the manager. You need to take charge. Did Beltran have a more distinguished career than you? Yes. Does Beltran still have a more distinguished career than you? Yes. But at the end of the day, you're the manager. Stop trying to skirt responsibility. Own it. Did he say that he could have done more? Yes. But he also hemmed and hawed and said, you know, it's complicated when you're talking about the inner workings of a team, and he didn't really address Beltran specifically. But the fact that A.J. Hinch, even before he won a World Series, was willing to defer this much to Carlos Beltran is scary. Look, I get it. You were not a great manager before the 2017 season. You failed with the Diamondbacks, and you were just okay with the Astros before 2017. So with that in mind, is it okay to defer to Beltran a little bit? Yeah, look, I don't mind Hinch talking to Beltran and asking him how he thinks Hinch is doing as manager. At the end of the day, if Carlos Beltran says something to me, I'm going to listen to him. The guy knows much more about baseball than me. There's no question about that. And there's nothing wrong with soliciting advice from listening to his counsel and giving him a proverbial seat at the table. That's fine. I honestly don't have a problem with that. But to let him get away with this? That's inexcusable. It hurts your legacy a lot more than it hurts Beltran's. At the end of the day, Beltran is probably still a Hall of Famer. A.J. Hinch, the only way he's getting into the Hall of Fame is if he buys a ticket. Before this, I was kind of confident that Hinch would get another managerial job when his suspension was over. But after this, I'd be really skeptical of hiring him. If you're going to defer this much to the players, at the end of the day, you're the captain. The buck stops with you. Joe Girardi was managing Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte, and Derek Jeter. 3 players who are infinitely better than Beltran. In fact, he managed Beltran also. You know what? He didn't let him get away with bloody murder. There was still, some discipline there. I don't give a damn that you smashed some replay monitors. You have to do more. I'd be really concerned with hiring Hinch after this if he's going to defer this much to veteran players. All in all, it's a disgusting situation for everyone involved. Commissioner Manfred did do the right thing in singling out Beltran. If there were other ringleaders in this, and they're still players, they need to be held accountable also. I don't want to hear this what happens in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse nonsense. Alright, this isn't, gambling or any disgusting personal hygiene habits that there may be. No, this is much worse. This is affecting the outcome of games. This calls into question the integrity of those games. And I applaud Mike Fiers for coming out and saying this. He's the kind of guy who I would want on my team a lot more than Beltran. And shame on Jessica Mendoza for saying what she said. Oh, I'd have kept it in the clubhouse. It's, inside stuff or whatever nonsense she said. I don't listen to Jessica Mendoza. I don't like Jessica Mendoza. I think she's an idiot. I don't think she knows a damn thing about baseball. Alright, she was a softball player. That's all she was. Now, she was a good softball player, but let's put Jenny Finch in the color commentator's role on Sunday Night Baseball. She'd be better than Mendoza. Mendoza's analysis is terrible. I don't respect her. I don't think she knows a damn thing about what she's saying. And what she said, saying Fire should have kept his mouth shut, just proves that. Thank God that it's just going to be Vasgersian and A-Rod in the booth next year, with Buster Olney as the field reporter. It makes that crew exponentially better to get her out of there. Moving over now to Mel Tucker being hired as the head football coach of the MSU Spartans. I usually don't talk about college head coaching vacancies just because there are so many of them and they come so fast and furious that it's impossible to keep them straight. But this is well after the season. This is really the only notable one that's going on right now. I don't even know if there's another one going on right now in some small school. I mean, now there is in Colorado, but I doubt I'm going to talk about it when they fill that. D'Antonio retired after a great career at MSU. He won a Rose Bowl, he won a Cotton Bowl, and he's one of the best coaches in the history of MSU football. So the Spartans obviously had some big shoes to fill, and they zeroed in on Mel Tucker very early on. Look, Tucker is a very well-respected football mind. He's been coaching for my whole life. Literally, I was born in 97. He's been coaching ever since then. And he's a really good defensive coordinator. There's no question about that. and he's been a good positional coach or defensive coordinator wherever he's been. Then finally, he got his first full-time head coaching opportunity in Colorado, and he went 5-7. Now look, you really can't read too much into a college coach's first year. He hasn't had a chance to recruit. He hasn't had a chance to put into effect the system. And I'm willing to give him a pass there. That's not the issue with this. The issue with this is Michigan State giving him over $5.5 million to coach their team. And that's coming from Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. Look, if you think that Tucker's the right guy, go after him. That's fine. I don't mind that. But to give him over $5.5 million when he's proven nothing as a college head coach? There had to be someone else you could go to. Fine, Luke Fickell turned you down. You know what? You can still go to your third guy. I understand it's a bad look, but it's better than spending $5.5 million on a coach who only has 1 year as a college head coach under his belt. I'm not saying Tucker's going to do a bad job, but I'd be very surprised if he lived up to this salary. Jim Harbaugh hasn't lived up to his salary, and Harbaugh's a million times better than Mel Tucker. I also don't like how Tucker went about this. He turned MSU down and announced he was going to stay with Colorado. He told all his recruits he was going to stay with Colorado. He went on fundraising efforts for the university, and then he circles back to MSU. That's not a good look. It's okay to change your mind, but you've got to do it quicker than that. You know, now you've put Colorado in a terrible position. They're in the Pac-12, which is rapidly losing status as a major college football conference. I don't even know if you can call it a major college football conference anymore. The Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, maybe even the AAC, they're all more prevalent than the Pac-12. You've put them at a major disadvantage now. They now need to find a new head coach after you told them they didn't have to. Again, it's okay if you want to change your mind, but you've got to do it differently. This isn't a good look for Tucker. I think he'll do a good job at MSU, and all this bad blood really will fade away. There will be people who root for Colorado and at the university that won't forgive him, but at the end of the day, when MSU is starting off their season, we're not going to think about them. We're going to think about how Tucker is doing as a head coach. And I don't think he's going to live up to his salary. I don't mind the Spartans doubling his coaching salary pool, though. You know, those assistant coaches really do a lot of the grunt work. They don't get a lot of credit. I remember when Jim Harbaugh was hired as the University of Michigan's head coach, he took a lesser salary. And he did that because he wanted to pay his assistants more. So, look, Tucker isn't taking a lesser salary, but it just speaks to the head coaches and the schools realizing how important these assistant coaches are. They're a lot more important in college than they are the NFL. The assistant coaches can really make a difference in college because these guys are more teachable. In the NFL, once you start getting that big money, what is the positional coach telling you that you don't already know? Speaking of college, there are a few college games that I want to talk about today. And I'll start with Creighton versus Seton Hall. Now, I've talked about Seton Hall a lot. Not much has changed with them. So, instead, I want to focus on Creighton and the great job that Greg McDermott has done with them. You may not know the name Greg McDermott, but he's been with Creighton for an incredibly long time. And every year, it seems, he has them competitive. I know he had a couple years in the middle of the 2010s that weren't that good, but no, McDermott has done a fantastic job with Creighton ever since he's been there, and he's doing it again. Tyshawn Alexander, Marcus Zagorowski, Mitchell Ballack, and Denzel Maloney are four really, really good offensive players. Mitchell Ballack can shoot the lights out like nobody's business. He is one of the most underrated shooters in the nation, and Denzel Maloney is one of the most underrated players in the nation. The thing about Creighton is they're very offensive driven. They're a team that looks to outscore you. They do not look to out-defend you. And that is where Seton Hall can take advantage of them. Seton Hall is a lot more balanced than Creighton. We all know this. It's at Seton Hall. So, I'm going to go with the Pirates. Moving over now to Kansas, West Virginia. And, look, you don't need me to extol the virtues of the Kansas program. We all know how historically dominant they've been. We all know that Bill Self has carried over that tradition incredibly well. One of the best coaches in the nation by far. Not even close. That goes without saying. Instead, I want to focus on three really good players from Kansas. Devon Dotson, Udoka Azubuike, and Ochai Agbaji. Or is it Ochai Agbaji? I'm actually not sure. I think it's Ochai. I'm just going to call him Agbaji. It's these damn names. Everyone should be named John Smith. I'm telling you. But look, they're three really good players. Kansas is a really well-balanced team this year. Yeah, their defense gets the headlines, but their offense is really underrated this year. Devon Dodson's one of the best scorers in the nation. Azubuike is a dominant big man. He's probably the most dominant big man in college this year. I'd probably put him ahead of Vernon Carey. And Agbaji is a really, really good player. The thing that I don't like about Kansas this year is they really only have one great three-point shooter, and that is Christian Braun. And even then, he's not that great. He's not going to set the world on fire. He's a good three-point shooter, but he's not great. It's an area that may hurt Kansas down the line. But when you look at WVU, they're led by a player with a name that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. Oscar something or other. I think it's Tshiebwe, actually. I'm not sure if that's right or not. Actually, all the announcers just call him Oscar. So, look. Everyone should be named John Smith. We all know that. But that doesn't take away from Oscar's greatness. And Derek Culver, too. The thing with WVU that I don't like is they're duplicative. And what I mean by that is Oscar and Derek Culver are two very similar players. They play a very similar game, close to the basket, they clog the lane, and they look to dominate the interior. They're very, very duplicative. Their secondary pieces, Miles McBride and Jermaine Haley, are less duplicative, but they put up similar results. McBride is their best perimeter player. He comes off the bench for him. He should be starting. but Jermaine Haley's another guy who doesn't space the floor. I don't like this WVU team this year. I understand Press Virginia and Bob Huggins will always have a great defense, but this is a WVU team that I'm very skeptical of. I'm putting them on upset alert in March, and I'm picking Kansas tonight. The last game that I want to talk about is Marquette versus Villanova. And you can't talk about Marquette without talking about my favorite player in the nation, a guy who I think is going to be a great player in the next level. I'm not saying Hall of Famer, I'm not saying All-Star, but I think he's going to be great for a really, really long time. And that is Marcus Howard. This guy dominated college last year. He dominated the year before. He even dominated the year before that, his freshman year. Granted, he wasn't putting up 20 points a game, but still, you took notice of him whenever you watched Marquette. And this year, he's leading the nation in scoring. Yeah, I understand his efficiency has taken a step back, but still, he's averaging 27.5 points a game. I mean, my God. He's still shooting really well, 39.5% from three. He's so much fun to watch. He's got to be more careful with the ball, though. Him and Kobe McEwen, Marquette's third best player, really need to be more careful with the ball. They do turn the ball over a lot, and it does cost Marquette sometimes, but usually they're able to shoot the lights out, and they do that with the help of Sakara Neem also, who's probably their best three-point shooter. He's also really good when it comes to the mid-range game and the interior game. This is a Marquette team that is capable of putting up 80 points like that. And Villanova, I've talked about them before. They're a well-balanced team. Jay Wright always does a great job. Not much has really changed with their players. Sadiq Bey, Colin Gillespie, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Justin Moore, Jermaine Samuels, and Cole Swider are 6 really good players. But I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with Marquette tonight. I think Marquette is going to shoot the lights out. This is not a good Villanova team defensively. They're okay defensively, but they're not great. Villanova doesn't do one thing really well this year. They just do everything okay. They do have different ways to beat you, which I like, but when a team is so dominant in one area, like Marquette is, or dominant defensively, like West Virginia is, that's gonna pose a problem for Villanova. I'm gonna go with the Golden Eagles tonight. Alright, last show, I just did This Day in Sports History, so I think I'm gonna even it out here. I'll change my mind a little bit. I'll end with just a Mount Rushmore. If you've been keeping score, you know that I've done all my favorite teams. So, where am I going to go now? Well, I'm going to go to baseball, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order, starting with the city that they play in, or the state that they play in, as the case may be. And that means that I'm going to do the Arizona Diamondbacks Mount Rushmore. It's probably obvious as to who the 4 players are going to be. It's just a matter of where you put them. Before I go through the 4 players, I just want to give an honorable mention to Brandon Webb, a guy who I remember watching and I remember loving. I thought Webb was going to be a fantastic pitcher for many years. Granted, he played for some lousy Diamondbacks teams. He's very similar to Jacob deGrom. Great pitcher, didn't get any run support, and because of that, his win-loss record isn't what it should have been. He finished 87-62. He should have had really 100, 110 wins. I mean, he should have gotten that easily. But in 2009, he got hurt. He suffered a bunch of setbacks. And it's a big what if as to how his career would have gone if he had stayed healthy. We could be talking about Brandon Webb as a future Hall of Famer. That's how dominant he was. In 2008, he won the Cy Young. He went 22-7. The year before that, 18-10 with a 3 ERA and 4 complete games. He was an old school pitcher. He'd go 200 innings easily, year after year after year. It may be part of the reason why he got hurt. It's really, really sad to think about the fact that we were deprived of seeing his greatness for a longer period of time. There are some people that may even put Webb on their Mount Rushmore for Diamondbacks. At the end of the day, I didn't, just because he wasn't there long enough. And, you know, I have to punish him for getting hurt. It may be a little mean, but it's the truth. The correct Mount Rushmore for the Diamondbacks is Randy Johnson, Luis Gonzalez, Curt Schilling, and Paul Goldschmidt. All you have to do is look at the 2001 World Series, and you'll see how dominant Johnson, Gonzalez, and Schilling were. Johnson and Schilling killed the Yankees in 5 out of the 7 games. And Luis Gonzalez obviously notched the game-winning hit in that series off of Mariano Rivera in one of the most heartbreaking innings in Yankee history. It's an inning that I'm actually having trouble talking about because it's so upsetting. And there is really no question that the Yankees lost to an inferior team. You can't tell me when you look at that Diamondbacks roster in 2001 that they were better than the Yankees. They just had the 2 better pitchers. And sometimes that's all it takes. The Yankees in that World Series only had 1 starter hit above 250. You know who it was? Paul O'Neill. He had 333. 5 for 15. You know how many extra base hits he got? 1. He hit a double. Johnson and Schilling were probably the most dominant duo in World Series history. There are some people who will put Brandon Webb over Paul Goldschmidt, but like I said, I have to punish Webb for getting hurt, and Goldschmidt is second in a lot of Diamondbacks hitting categories. He was the best player on a bunch of Diamondbacks teams, and I wanted the Yankees to trade for him, not this past offseason when they got Garrett Cole, but the offseason before when they traded for James Paxton. We all knew going into that offseason that the Yankees were going to trade Justice Sheffield. They had soured on him. They used to like him, but then for whatever reason they changed their tune, and we all knew that he was going to be traded. I wanted the Yankees to trade for Paul Goldschmidt because I was not sold on Luke Voit. I liked Voit. I still like Voit. I think Luke Voit should be the starting first baseman for the Yankees on opening day. But there was enough doubt in my mind 2 off-seasons ago that I wanted the Yankees to trade Voit and Justice Sheffield and maybe another prospect, whether it was Dom Thompson-Williams or Eric Swanson, whoever, for Paul Goldschmidt. Can you imagine how dominant Goldschmidt would have been in Yankee Stadium? He had 34 home runs last year playing for the Cardinals. Yankee Stadium is much more of a hitter's park than Busch Stadium. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Goldschmidt would have hit 40 home runs last year if he was playing for the Yankees. But, whatever. I'm happy with Luke Voit. I like Voit. I like Paxton. I think he'll come back from the injury okay. It's just an interesting hypothetical, and it's one to keep in the back of your mind this year. Tomorrow, I'm going to recap those 3 college games, along with any other sports news that breaks. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that a way to speed up baseball is to institute a rule that hitters can only scratch themselves once per at-bat.